All right, I think we'll get rolling here. Thank you everybody for coming out on Friday morning. Hopefully it was a good week. Looks like some warmer weather's on. You were here for a basics of Google Analytics class. If you want, this link here is URL into a box folder. Come on in. That will have the slides. It will have some of the resources that we'll talk about today. It'll have some of the community practice information that we'll talk about, so you can help explore Google Analytics even further. Basic introduction of what we're doing here today. Is that all right? Yes. Okay. We're not going to go deep. We're not going to go too deep into Google Analytics. You're not going to be creating conversion goals and measuring them at this point. I think we need to set a foundation of like what we're talking about here and why we're doing some of the things that we might do with Google Analytics. So we're going to take an introductory view. We're going to look inside the dashboard. We're going to think about what our goals might be for our analytics. What do we want to track with our websites or applications? And we want to talk about why that's important. And like I said, the basics of getting in here. I'm making some assumptions as to why you're here, but this is common reasons why people have said they want to learn more about Google Analytics on campus. Maybe these fit with what your thoughts are. A lot of people come in and just say, I don't know, I set up Google Analytics, I'm not doing anything with it. What should I do with it? What's the thing that I need to look at? And I think we'll try to start tackling what are some of those things, as well as looking at examples of what other folks on campus are doing with their Google Analytics. This will be the agenda for the day. We'll talk about goals first. Goals isn't the favorite thing that everyone wants to talk about, but I think it's important when we're talking about what we want to measure with our websites or applications. We're going to talk about what Google Analytics is. Why should you use it? What are you going to get out of it? We're going to take a quick tour at the end of this, and then we're going to go about an hour in discussion here. You are welcome to ask questions as we go. After that, we'll have kind of like an open lab where we can address individual questions. Two of my colleagues, Maria Damon and Laura Grady in the front row here, are going to be here to also help with your questions. So I can't answer everyone's questions at the same time. So we're going to try and divvy it up as we go. A little introduction about me. This is myself. I'm a content strategist with the Center for Digital Accessibility. Hi, welcome. And user experience. It's a new center that is on campus. Right now, we'll talk about what we do. For this presentation, I would say, one of my credentials is that I'm Google Analytics certified. What does that mean? It means I went to Google's training materials online. I took their courses, and I got a certificate that I could print out and hang on my fridge that says I'm analytics certified. It's no magic trick. I work in analytics a lot, and that's what you're going to find is like, you're not going to get all this today. The more and more you work with it, the more you're going to learn and understand how to use it. I also like to think of the center and myself as a campus partner. We are not an agency to hire that is going to do work for you. We try to collaborate on projects, is at least the way that our center is heading. We want to work with you. We're not on the outside. We want to raise capacity so everybody on campus can do this for themselves, so they can learn. I should also mention that this presentation is a collaboration of the WisWeb team at Do-It and the center as well. We work together to format these things. WisWeb is the host that many of you probably have your sites on right now. It's okay if you don't have your site on that right now. We're not pushing or advocating for that, because you can use Google Analytics either way if you have it on WisWeb or not. A little bit about the center. Again, we work with partners across campus to design a more accessible campus, usable when we talk about our websites as well. We want to make sure that we're understanding the user needs of websites on campus. A lot of times we think about our website as our department, and we don't think about how that's connected to the greater university campus. That's one thing that we like to keep in mind, is the relationships that where we are in relationship to campus, in relationship to a student's experience at campus. How does your website or your information come into play for a student or a faculty or staff member? Those are things that you should think about, especially when you're thinking about your analytics as well. And we want to help you take action. that will help your users, essentially, of your website. We do trainings like this. We offer guidance. We do have some space where we do cost recovery effort where we will focus on like one-on-one collaboration with folks as well. Some of the places we've been working in the last 2 years, I think. New law school website, financial aid we've helped out with, medicine.wisc.edu. We're currently working with business services to roll out a new website. The Bursar's office, the new enrollment app is something that we've had our hands definitely in. And there's a lot of work that goes in behind the scenes of these things before you get the final proof of the website. Analytics is one part of that. This is a list of questions that people often come to us. Maybe you have some of these questions about your website. Take a look at it for a second. Is there anything else? This isn't by far, a complete list of all things. You might have a lot of questions with your website. The bold ones, I think, are common ones when people ask about analytics. We're not going to answer all these questions today.
I would add what browser people are using.
What browser are people using? It's a question.
Yesterday, I stumbled on the browser issue. I mean, it was not me. I was the client. Right? And then I phoned, and they told me, oh, it works almost only with Internet Explorer.
Right. Yep.
And so I told them, well, that's not even the most used browser these days. And it's,
yep.
So I tried on the Mac from Firefox, Safari, and Chrome. Didn't work.
Yep.
So I opened the virtual windows and worked with Internet Explorer, but then on the Mac I downloaded the new one called Vivaldi. That worked.
Oh, okay. How would you describe that experience that you had?
Well, it was very annoying. Especially I was doing things yesterday, like on 3 different websites. I had to receive phone calls for dual purpose thing. Very, very annoying.
Yeah.
And then I went to a HMO website. This is horrible. These are the worst websites. You cannot find any information. It's all like blah, 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 blah. We're the best. We're going to cure whatever, we are here for the community. But it's just horrible.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah. We're not going to fix those problems today. This is the starting point so we can start diagnosing those problems and see where we can go from. But yes, thank you. Right. So when we talk about measuring things, we want to talk about measuring for action. If we knew something from our analytics, if like we saw this report in our Google Analytics account that said something's happening, page views are skyrocketing on this page, they dropped completely after we sent an email. We want to be able to say, if we're going to measure something, let's measure something that will matter for action. Another way to say that is like, if we knew something about our website, we had like data on it, would we make any change to our website based upon that? That's probably one of the more important concepts I would like to get across today, is that like action needs to take place. Yeah, you can look at Google Analytics and we'll talk about all the things that you can see. You can see 100 million different things with your Google Analytics account, but which ones are important? And that's kind of what we want to get to. The part of the analytics that can tell you how to take an action to make an improvement. That's what's important. You want to try and talk about how your goals or the things you might measure on your site might tie into your mission as well. Sometimes we just put the website up and we put all the stuff there and like we just say, okay, you can go to the website and everything is there, but like what's important? What's really important to people? That's a key piece that we want to talk about. So this question is more of a recent question that's come up. Do I have to use Google Analytics to measure things on my site, assuming I want to measure things on my site? No, you do not. There's plenty of tools out there. This is the reason why some people are questioning whether or not to use Google Analytics anymore. This is from The Economist last year, and you can see that pie wedge about search content. Google is tied into search, and 91%, that's a lot. Some people have been thinking about, hey, wait a minute, Google is doing all the things, and what are they doing with all this data, and what, how does that tie into like my university mission? And wait a minute, I might have protected information on my site or things that I might not want exposed in some way or another. Google seems to, if I turn this on my website, they're gonna maybe know all the things, and I don't know if I want them to know all the things. That is a legit concern, I think. We'll talk about how we work through those things. These are other choices that are out there. There's lots of them. Some of them will cost you money to sign up and use. Google Analytics is free, with a little asterisk I'll put on that. These places are probably going to collect the same type of data that you're talking about, and maybe in a less protected way than Google. Google is the 800-pound gorilla, but they also are far more advanced, I think, in some of the ways that we might talk about when we're talking about measuring analytics. So goals. I'll circle back to website goals. This is the key thing. When we're talking about analytics, you should actually start talking about your goals first. You say, yes, I want to use analytics to improve things, but like, what about the goals? What are the things that I want to improve? I would highly recommend not skipping this step, and there's things that you can do that are completely analog and offline to think about what are your goals for your website. What do you want people to do with your content or your app that you have on campus? And how can that best serve people on campus? This statement's true. It gets messy real fast. There's a ton of things we're going to look at. And if you don't think about what your goals are first, it's going to be like, oh no, I have all these decisions to make, and which ones are the right ones that I want to make? It'll feel like that. It's a dump truck backing up a load of, I don't know if that's salt or snow. I imagine it's salt, since we had so much salt this winter. But that's what could it feel like. It's just going to be like you are going to get dumped a whole bunch of data right on your lap. What do I do with that? It can get intimidating all of a sudden, which is why some people have said, yeah, I set Google Analytics up, but I don't know what to do with it now. It's a lot of things to think about. Goals are tough. This is from 2012, so it's getting a little dated now, but this is what somebody's example of like what a higher ed website should be. My question is, would you ever visit that site? Like, what am I going to get from that site? Am I going to be able to check the date that my exam is done? I don't know. There's a lot of things that are going on there. This is a little funnier take on it. This is sometimes how we think about our websites on campus. The director says we need my statement on the front page of the site. How important is that, really? I think it's okay to challenge some of those ideas. Sometimes the sites reflect what we want them to be, not necessarily what the user coming to the website wants. With Google Analytics or analytics measurements of any, you can start to flush out what are those things as you start getting metrics and rankings on what people do actually look at on your website. I'll say it again, is Google Analytics part of the solution? It's part of it. It's not going to fix everything, but it's one part of the puzzle. So, okay, how do I figure out what my goals are? Here's two ideas to do it. This is something from Thomas Redman of Data Quality Solutions. Think like a data scientist. It's a good list, actually. When you think about your goals, you're kind of doing number 1 and 2 right here. What do we want to know? How are we going to answer that question? And then, in general, not specifically all the time, but kind of like numbers 3 through 5, that's what Google Analytics or an analytics piece is going to help you start doing. There's some visualizations in Google Analytics, not a ton. Reminder, I'll have the link to the slide so you can get all these at the end too if you didn't get it already too. Numbers 6 through 8, that's your brain right there. You need to critically interpret what's going on. You can't just say, here's all the numbers. You need to kind of assess like what's happening with those numbers. How do I process that? Are you going to be a data scientist at the end of your work with Google Analytics? Probably not. There's a whole lot of research, but this is a good base template. Some of you might have seen this if you came to a previous presentation. This is called a HEART framework. This is another way to suss out what your goals are. We won't go too deep into what this is today, but essentially what you do is on the left column, you have goals there, and you try to come up with, you just brainstorm your goals based on these metrics: happiness, engagement, adoption, retention, and task success. That's what HEART is, the acronym. Once you have those goals, you try and develop some signals. How do we know that that goal is happening? So for example, the IT website is something that I work on a lot. My goal for happiness for the IT website, I would say, is like, I want people to be able to log into their email easily. Simple goal. How would I know that that's happening? We might check the logs with Office 365 and that says, I don't know, that 70% of people today logged into their email account. That's awesome. What's the metric that I would use for that? That's where Google Analytics can come in. So say on my web page, on the IT website that has a button that says log into email, I can track how many clicks people click on that button. And over time, I can see where that's gone up or down. And if it's going down and I start getting complaints at the help desk that say they can't find that thing, that's a correction that we need to make. That would be an action that we could take from Google Analytics to correct that. You would go through all these steps, and hopefully you'd have like this really base chart that sets goals tied into the metrics. Some of those metrics might be Google Analytics. Some of them might come in the form of like a survey or talking to somebody, sitting down and doing a user test with a user to ask them questions. And then we could have some metrics from those questions. There is, in the slides, I've also got a resource of this blank form and also a completed one that I use for the IT website that you can take a look at and review as well. So what are other folks doing? These are some similar goals that we've seen that people want to know about on campus. If you go to Google's website and use their training materials, they're going to talk very abstractly about what goals are, because they don't know what we're doing at the university. They just are talking about, these are high-level concepts of goals, but these are kind of some specific things that people seem to be looking at. How do I get a hold of the person that can help me with this thing? How do I log into the service is the example. How do I find an advisor? How do I get to your place so I can sit down and talk with you? These are often, you kind of see these are like, they're task-based. They're like, I need to do this thing. That's the user's needs. That's what the person coming to the website needs. With the Center for Digital Accessibility and User Experience, we talk a lot about user-centered design. That is, instead of saying like, here's all our stuff on the website, we want to present that to the user based on what they need from it. Analytics is one way to help start sussing out what the user needs. When you consider goals, maybe you've seen some of this, the SMART acronym. Sorry, I hate acronyms, but I know I just used 2 of them in this presentation. Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. So what that means is, don't say we want our website to be #1 upon Google search results in perpetuity across the universe. Probably not going to happen. But you can say that, like, starting in the fall semester, I want to see a 25% increase in organic traffic search, or starting over the next 2 semesters. We'll talk about what organic search is. That's essentially like an unpaid or a Google search, or somebody going to Google and typing in something and getting to your website. Questions so far? Already kind of covered a lot of ground there. Cool. So what is it? What are we talking about specifically here? Google Analytics is a free web-based tool. You don't install anything on your computer to help you understand quantitatively. So it's quant, it's numbers, it's numerics, to tell you what's happening on your website. This kind of like life cycle, this iterative process, is kind of what you do. You might have different things, but essentially you install Google Analytics, you start taking some measurements from it, you draw some insights. This is where you have to determine what's important for your site. You make an improvement. Hopefully that leads to a better experience. And then you just test it again, see if something happened there. Google will tell you some of the things that you might get out is brand loyalty. If you provide a better experience on your site, people will come back to it. You might want a conversion. We'll talk about A conversion in Google Analytics language, and that's something to note too, is there's a language barrier with Google Analytics too. They describe things in a way that you might not describe them. So there's a little piece where you might have to learn about what they're talking about. A conversion in Google Analytics language is a goal to them. So say my goal was to get to the help page of my website. I might set a conversion that would say, I want to look at people who come to my homepage, click on the help button on my homepage, then go to the help page, and then click on, I don't know, send an email to the help desk or something like that. That process we could call a conversion, and I could measure that flow through the site and whether or not that's happening. And once I start collecting some data, is that happening often? Is that happening more often than I want? Is it happening less often than I want? That's kind of like what we'd like to look at. A silly explanation. Free, I'll put an asterisk and we'll talk about the free value here as well. With Google Analytics, some tools come right out of the box. You can throw it on your website and it'll start tracking data right away if you set it up correctly. Some of the tools we'll talk about require a little more setup. We haven't talked about Tag Manager or Search Console. Those are two things that I would recommend you integrate with your site, and we'll talk about how those integrate with your site. Tag Manager is like, it's a tool that lives right next door to Google that can do a couple different things for you. It does more depth tracking. One of the things it does is track events. In Google Analytics language, they call an event. I would call that something somebody does on the website, like click a button or click on a link or do that. Tag Manager, essentially, you put one piece of code on your site and it can track all the things that are happening across your site, as opposed to me putting a link on homepage, click on this button. I don't have to do that individually for each element that I want to track and see what people are clicking on. Tag Manager just does that across the site if you tell it how to do that correctly. Search Console is a key tool that you would use to look at what are the keywords, what are people typing into Google that gets them to my sites. We won't go too in depth as to like how that works, but essentially those keywords are important. Those keywords are the user's language. That's what what they put into a Google search, that it's their expectation, essentially. It's not our language, it's their language. This is kind of how these things interact with each other. You might have your WordPress site, WhiskWeb, or whatever, if you're on Drupal, that's fine too. So the top left is your website. The way they recommend to do it is install the Tag Manager snippet on your website. You make Tag Manager talk back to Google Analytics just by, selecting a couple different things. And then you tie in Search Console into your Google Analytics account. And then when I go to look at the data that I want to look at, I look in Analytics. There's just like this wonky setup. Yes, there's like 6 different tools that are happening. Why doesn't Google just like make them all one yet? I think they're probably working towards that. They're just not there yet. They've been building and iteratively creating these things as they go. So that's the current ecosystem of how these things might work together. Any questions on that? I know that's like, we're getting like deeper into levels here, but yes.
So like you have to have the Google Tag Manager in your site for the search terms to work.
Not necessarily in that order. Yes, you want to put Google Tag Manager on your site. Search talks to Google Analytics. Those two talk back and forth together. You can go into search by itself and look at it, or you can tell search to feed all that information into your Google Analytics account. This is the space where you're going to look at your reporting and go back and look at like what's happening on my website. Does that make sense?
Is it the same as the Google customized search engine?
So the way that I know on that. So the way that it works is these are 3 independent services. They are each individual Google services. Each of them, so the other 2 tie into Analytics. Analytics is kind of like the hub of the 2 of them. So you can have Google Search, Google Custom Search Engine. You can have Google Tag Manager, but Analytics is where all of that stuff can embed too. So Tag Manager, for example, can tell you how many times you get to the download, but it tells you in Analytics. Google Custom Search can tell you most frequently used search terms, but it's fed to Analytics. So they are independent, but analytics is kind of like the hub of the resource itself. And all of that is a next step beyond what we're going to talk, what we want to talk about in this class, because it does get into a little bit more of how do you tie the three together into that one hub. So yes, but they kind of all just sort of work together independently and feed to one location.
A lot of moving parts here. I know it's a lot to consider as you're going here. Things to know. Google has done a fine job marketing, telling you that it is a system that helped you find what you need and helped give you, a peace of mind. And they put smart speakers in your house so you can do tasks and find solutions and all that. Don't be mistaken. Google is a paid advertising tool for sure. It is a machine designed to create money for Google. That's okay, I think, if we use it with intention. And I think our intention here on campus is to measure the things that we're doing so we can improve them, to make them better for whoever we are serving. Students, faculty, staff, folks on the outsides, wanting to learn more about UW-Madison. Here's the example. In 2015, this is data, this is already old data. Google cranked out $75 billion in money. And you can see that the advertising revenue makes up 2/3, well, even more than 2/3 of that actually. In 2018, they're up to 136 billion globally, most of that coming from the United States. How do they do that? Paid. You pay to get in search ranking, in search engines, and in search ranking, so your thing shows up at the top of it. There's also advertisements and lots of other things that are happening with Google. Just saying this so you know that that's their intention. That they'll say that yes, we'll make your life easier and do all these things. Don't forget, they're making money too. So that is a good idea to even collect data with that. Yeah, I still think it is for the reasons we just said. We're a learning institution. We want to improve and make things better. I think that's our intention. So yeah, there's an ethical dilemma right there. It's written on the wall, but I still think it's a good idea to collect and measure your information. Google Analytics will tell you technically what users are doing on your site. It will help you draw conclusions about how to fix things. It is not going to tell you how to fix a problem. It is not going to tell you what data is important to look at. It is not going to tell you, it's not going to give you a report that's necessarily easy to cut through. You kind of have to learn these things with Google Analytics, and it will not tell you what's going on in the mind of the user when they make a choice on your website. That is something that a user experience specialist will do. That is the expertise of some of the folks that I work with. That is something where you need to sit down and talk to somebody and ask them, what was the decision you made when you decided to click on this thing, and how can we improve that to make that easier for you to get to the thing that you need to get to? This is another bit of Google's language, filtering and segmentation. You get a lot of basic information on your site. You can look at everything on it. Filtering and segmenting are ways to cut through that. A filter, if you can think of it, it's like a high-level sorting function. So if you know Excel a little bit, you can sort. A filter is kind of like a high-level sort that you would say, I only want to look at external traffic. So not the people in my office. I want to look what other people are doing on my site. That you might set a filter at a high level. So your data is all of a sudden cleaned for only external traffic. A segment is like another way to look at more specific data that you have. It can be under a filter. So if I only want to look at a certain demographic, and Google won't tell you if it's a student that's coming to your site. Google will tell you if an 18 to 24 person will come to the site. If you want to look at that segment, and you can look at servers that only come from UW-Madison, that's something you can look at Google, and whether or not they're using mobile devices. That's something that you can suss out with a segment, and once you create these segments inside of Google Analytics, you can just reuse them over and over again. So if that's data you want to keep looking at, you don't have to keep searching for it. Google keeps changing. They've probably changed something in the time that we've been talking on this website. Google Signals is their new tool, another thing, another system to add on. That's something where they're going to talk about cross-device tracking. So I'll be able to tell if someone owns, if you're like me, I have an iPhone, I got an iPad, I got a desktop, it can tell the connections that have been happening in between those three things, which, you know, as the owner of that website or information, that might be helpful. You know, are most people, you know, going to buy something, do they look on their phone first and then they go home and hop on the computer and then confirm it? That might be one of the tasks. I don't know, I mean, there might be a use case for us for like that on campus here. I'm not sure if I know what it is yet, but you know, maybe we'll figure out something like that. But just to note that like they keep rearranging things and I even have to go in there, I'm like, wait, where did they move the thing to? It's usually always there, but sometimes they just change how it's set up. So, okay, yikes, who can help me with these things? We're gonna have training classes like these. There's a community practice. Information is in the slides that you can access. In a lot of cases though, this is your own learning. You know, unless we get to a point where we're doing like a one-on-one consultation, this is a lot on your shoulders to try and figure out. We're gonna try and get you there as much as we can, but just to note, this could be largely on you. There's not like a central place on campus. There's not a center for Google Analytics. There's some people that can help get you part of the way, and you're gonna need to take it from there. Okay. Over questions. All right, why? Your data is probably the best information you're gonna get about your website. It's customized to you. You can use this information to talk about what's more effective on your website. This is you collecting some evidence to say like, should we put all of our meeting minutes on our front page so everybody can see them and know exactly what we're doing? This can help bubble up what's the most important content. We'll go into Google Analytics and we'll look at what's the top page on my site. If I know what the top page is on my site, chances are that's something that's important to people. So what am I doing to make sure people can get to that easier? And that's kind of like that little process of like, what's the action I would take to improve that thing? Maybe if this is my most important page, I'm gonna make it more obvious as to how to get to that thing. This is the IT website. It looks a little different now. We use Google Analytics to track things like our navigation on this, and you can see some hotspots that are on there as well as these buttons here. And we know that get software might be hard to read. That's what people like to go to this website to find. They want to download Adobe and Excel and all their tools that they need. So we, every once in a while, will go in, and every once in a while, it's not great. That's not a very smart goal. Once every semester, let's say, we go in and we look at our analytics. We like, what's our top pages? We reorder these things. We might look at reordering services, news, learn about community and governance as well. Are all of those things the top content in your navigation? No, because politics rather. People want, you know, the director says community needs to go on the homepage because I say so. We know that like it's a green button, only 0.8% of traffic to the website goes there, but that's important to the director, leader, whoever that is. Sure, you know, that's a decision you need to make and work through. But at least you have some data to say, you know what, that's not the most top click-through page, but it's still important to somebody in our org, so you put it on there. So this is gonna inform decision-making. You get data to support your decisions. You're not just winging it. You're not just saying, let's throw all the things on the site and hopefully people will find what they're gonna find. You have some data to back up what you're saying. This helps with SEO, search engine optimization, if you're not familiar. That's how people find your site. If you know the keywords that people are coming to your site for, you can create a page that has that keyword up front and present. Therefore, if I type in software at UW-Madison, I'm gonna come to a page that says software, UW-Madison, and it will have me a button to log into the campus software library to get that. That's, in a very basic nutshell, search engine optimization. You're using the tools and the information that they give you to help improve your pages. An example, SEO is important these days. We noticed in fall of 2017, we didn't notice. That's when we decided to do some SEO optimizations on the IT website. So we did things just like that. We did an analyzation of the keywords from Google Search Console. What are the important things? What we found is that people will often type in like the thing they need. Software is going to be my example again. Software might be something different on your website, and they'll type in UW-Madison with it too. So, you know, think about the way you use Google. You're trying to like localize it and help Google get you to the thing that you want. That's a lot what people do with our campus websites. They'll say Bursar, UW-Madison, or financial aid, UW-Madison. Those two keywords together, when you combine those, put them on your page in a way that Google can interpret that, that's going to improve your search rankings. That's what we call organic search. You didn't pay to have that happen. You just made a change on your website and improved how people got there. We saw that happen on the IT website, so we made these changes pretty much site-wide. We did things to like put UW-Madison on every single page of the website. So they would associate like a service, like email or software, and then it would also be UW-Madison. We saw a 36% jump in organic traffic after that, and it's maintained since then, since the fall of, what did I say, 2017? Yeah, that's a good thing that you can do. You know, like, that's a game. I'm not trying to like, you know, boast or say like, look at our website now, how great it is. Like, to me, that means that more people are getting the information that they need. It doesn't mean that like, this is a bad website, that like we're dominating everyone else on campus. I don't think that's what we're about. We're about getting people the information they need. And since we saw that jump in organic traffic, that to me signals people are getting to the thing that they need. And that's a plus. That's what we want. Informing the user experience. Again, we're talking about user-centered design here again. If you know what people want, just give it to them. You know, put it out there. Make it easy for them to get it. Don't make them jump 10 hurdles to get to the thing that they need. This is going to help improve your content. So on software webpage, we just made it simple. Like, we don't need to list like every single piece of software and like the specs and details, and Macs can have this and PCs can have that. They just want to get to the software so they can access that thing they need. You might not need all that information on your website. You do need to find a balance. That's where we talked about politics sometimes. Sometimes there are stakeholders that need things. That's cool. There's got to be a balance happen, but at least you have that data again to help support your decisions here. It'll help you find out what works on your website. This is that example of like, what are the top pages? What content are people engaging with? How are people getting to their site? Is it through Google? Are they bookmarking things? Are they coming in from the email that we sent out to tell people to come back to get to that information? It's going to tell you it doesn't work. Do you need everything on your website? I'd say probably not. You need some things on your website. You might not need everything. One of the debates is meeting minutes and agendas. Do people really care? Do they need to access your meetings and agenda minutes from your website? I'm guessing there might be some use cases where that's true, but are the majority of your users going to get that? Probably not. So, okay, if we know that meetings and agendas are only 0.2% of all of our site traffic over a year's time, do we need to make that so up front and center? Maybe that's something that we put on an about page. About us, here's our meeting minutes. It might not be that important. Another way to handle those things, you know, there's other things. Do you need to put all these things on your website? Maybe not. Maybe you keep a box folder. Maybe you use another offline, or not offline, but another just storage tool to put all those things in there. Do you need the list of agendas from your meetings that go back to 2015? Probably not, but you might want to store those. So just keep them in a box folder is maybe one solution, and then just say on your website, here's all our previous meetings and agendas. You know, and the 0.02% of people who look for them still have a way to find that, but you don't have to bloat your website with that information that most people don't need. Track progress, it's kind of an obvious one. You're gonna look over time. You're gonna get a measure now, set a baseline. Did it improve? Did it go up? Did it go down? Conversions are something we talk about in the Google Analytics language. You can set a conversion like getting to that help page. If I know today 2% of people are getting to the help page, but my goal, because I set a goal, I said, you know what, I want at least 5% of my web traffic to get to that web page because that seems to be a thing that people need to be. I know I'm underperforming on that goal, so I need to do something to make an improvement. Maybe that's I need to send out more emails to say, don't forget, there's a help page that you can get information. Don't forget, maybe I need to do some social content. Maybe I need to do some, like, I don't know, a big billboard here on Campus Mall that says that. Like, that might be one of the changes that you might make. So there's this list here. This is why. Questions on that? I know, I'm getting itchy to actually get into the tool too here. Okay, quick dive through here. This is some of the language pieces. So we get this really technical thing. I don't know, if you're a data scientist, this might make sense to you. Historical archival data, structured data, sometimes real-time transactional data with nominal ratio measurements. Okay, you get what already happened on the site. You get some immediate information about what's happening right now. It comes in the form of numbers, sometimes in the form of categories. We'll look at like what those categories might be. Things it tells us. Are people visiting to our site? We can look at page views. How long are they spending on a page? How many pages do they visit? How did they get there? You can look at demographics. That's where that ethical question comes in too, though. Demographics, and this is the weird part, Google Analytics outsources with third-party vendors who create a profile of you online. So anytime you accept a cookie on a website, that cookie is gathering some information about you. And there are places like data warehouses that you may or may not be familiar with that are collecting all that information. And you can go to these websites and look up your name, and there will be a data profile of you. I've gone and looked at mine. It's a little creepy to see, like, they seem to know that I like to look at ski equipment, that I like dogs, that I read a lot of news. And I'm like, I don't know if I want them to know those things, but that is what they do. And Google Analytics works with them to build a profile. So they'll know age. That's how it can split out age. And it will interpret those things. I'll show you what the demographic profiles look like. Google, we talked about how some of the other tools may or may not be as sophisticated as Google. Google does some work to mask who you are personally. It won't show you anymore an IP address. Yes?
When you say age, it's not obviously can't totally 100% sure to tell you all of that. So is that data, how rock solid is it?
Yeah, take it with a grain of salt. Take it as a generalization, and you know, if it tells me that 90% of my traffic is coming from 18 to 24-year-olds, that probably tells me that I have a younger demo for my sites. If you know, 50%, if it's like 2020, 2020 for each of the different age demographics, that's not telling me a great story. So I might have to do some deeper research to find out what I need. Take it with a grain of salt. And that's how I treat a lot of my Google Analytics information. Is like, you can't say, you shouldn't say that this is the truth. Boom, take it to a judge and say, this is the facts right here. I'd say use it in a more generalized way to draw conclusions about what's going on in your site. There are some things that you can get like hard data on. How many times did this PDF get downloaded in January? I can look and say there was 40 downloads. And is that good? Is that bad? I don't know. Depends on what your goal is. You can do those things, but quite often I say try and take it with a little grain of salt. Does that make sense? Yeah. Specifically, this is Google's language. Bounce rate sessions, next page. A bounce rate, the way I would describe it, is when I come to a page, I don't make any interaction with the page, and I exit. That usually is an indication that I landed on this page. I am immediately confused because it's not what I expected, and I got out. I came there in error. Or Somebody who came there with intention came there, and we did not provide them the information that they were looking for them to continue on. So it's essentially like, did I come to the page, not engage at all? That includes a click, a scroll, anything, and just exit it out. A bounce rate can tell you how useful your content is on your page. Are you meeting that expectation for the user? A session is, think of it as like the arc of time that they might spend on your website. They might come to the home page, click on a button there, go to a secondary page, skip back to the home page, go to a third page. All that is considered one session. I might have individual page views on each of those. I went to page 1, 2, and 3. That's a page view, but the session is like the arc of all the things that I did on a site. The next page path, I came to the home page. What was the next page that I went to? Or if I'm on that secondary page, what page did I come from and where did I go from there? It kind of helps you draw out that like navigation path, the user flow on your site, how people are going through there, how much time they spent on a page. If you have a news story that you expect to be a 60-second read and most of your users are spending 5 seconds on the page, it's probably not doing what you think it's doing. It's confusing to the user or they don't find it engaging. So we need to make some type of change. Maybe we need to make that headline more engaging, or maybe we need to make it more specific to what they might need. Entrance, exit, do they come deep right onto a specific page? What page do they leave on? And then that user journey you can look at through the site too. So once you have a lot of this information, this is where you got to process. This is what I expected. Did I expect people to do this thing, or was something different? What does this say about the user? Google Analytics doesn't tell you that. You have to assess that. Maybe you get like a data point, and then you need to decide like, okay, this tells me some information. Maybe I need to go deeper. Maybe I need to get somebody to help me talk to a user to explain what's going on with this process that I have on the website. Questions on those? Okay. We'll zip through these things here. That's the basic thing. Anybody can set up an account. You just go to Google. It's analytics.google.com. You need to set it up for your page. We tend to recommend using a service account. So if your department has a service account, IT at wis.edu or something like that, it's easier for the continuity. In case you leave, your analytics account doesn't go with you, or at least share that with more people on the account. And we kind of talked about this process. Set up a Google Analytics, set up the tag manager, make sure those are talking to each other. You put the tag manager on your site, test to see if it's working, and then you verify with Search Console. There's a lot that goes into that stage, but that's the basics of it. 5 reports you get in there, real time. That's what's happening right now on my site. The audience, that's demographics plus some other things in there. Acquisition, where people come from, the behavior, things that they're doing, and then conversions. That's Google Analytics version of goals. We'll look at those things in just a second. Okay, take a quick break. I gotta flip over screens here and set up. Think of any questions you got, and we'll keep going here. Yes, analytics-basics. Go.wis.edu/analytics-basics. Did it not go? There you go.
Yeah.
There we go. You got it? Cool. Good.
Be there.
Okay, any questions popped up as we went in the intermediary there? Is this viewable? This gets a little fuzzy. I guess this is okay. You are welcome to log into your own account setup too and like play along if you have it and you want to. So here's what we're looking at. These are our reports right here. We just talked about those 5. Real-time stuff right now, who my audience is, where they came from, what are they doing? It's kind of like news reporter questions almost. Are they doing the thing that I want them to? Let's look at real time. Well, this is your login page here too. Google has set up this dashboard. This is kind of new-ish within the last, I don't know, year or so. So they've customized some things that they think you might want to see. The trend in traffic right here. How many active users are going on? They do some insights, which are kind of cool. They like pose a specific question now that you might be interested in. They do, this is your referral traffic. How do you acquire users? Organic search, referral, direct. So organic search is the dark blue if you can't see that. That's a big chunk of the traffic to this website. This is, again, the IT website. Yeah. Oh, let me see if I can do that. The question was to increase the screen size. Maybe this isn't my computer that it's running on, so thank you. Oh, we at there? Yeah, okay. Okay, so the site or the dashboard responds a little bit. So some of the things that you could look at. This is kind of cool. I don't know, like when do they visit? Yeah, we're a Monday through Friday business. Kind of knew that. That's when classes happen. Where do they come from? What are the types of devices that are coming to the site? This is very common. You might see this pattern on your site. A lot of people use desktops on campus. The rest of the world is moving way faster towards mobile than we are on campus. We still use a lot of desktop because we have a lot of employees and a lot of students who are doing work on things. So that's not uncommon. We'll see some like outward facing sites, WIS.edu, financial aid too. They see a lot more mobile traffic because they have people coming in from the outside versus people on campus using traffic. So real time is similar to what we were kind of looking at. You can look at an overview. Yay, I have 31 people on my site right now. I don't know what I'd do with that information other than I'm happy that people are using the site. It tells me some top pages that people are using right now. It's got this little trend bar, you know, yay, lots of bells and whistles, but like, okay, how do I make a decision based on this information? This is okay. You can look, we did some of this other stuff where people are coming from. This might be important if you are an outward facing site. You can dig in a little deeper with a specific report that doesn't just say United States. You can get all the way down to Madison. You know, are people coming from Madison or people coming from outside of Madison? And what does that tell me?
Can you compare to municipalities?
Yeah. You can do levels of sorts. And that would kind of be like a segment that we were talking about. So say I want to look at a segment that's only Madison, and then I want to look at a segment that's only Milwaukee. I can put those side to side next to each other, and I can see what does it tell me? You know, do I get most of my traffic from segment B or segment A? Yeah, you can do those types of comparisons with it.
That's under traffic sources.
Not in real time. So real time gives you right now. Let me circle back to that. That'd be a behavior task, essentially, that we would look at. Audience. You can look at an overview. This is essentially our audience right now, or at least I should say it's within the last week. This is another thing you need to make sure you're looking at too, is your date time. Here's where those segments come into play. So I'm looking at all users right now. Say I want to look at a segment of, sorry, I have a ton in here. News content. How many people went to a page that contains news in the URL? and I'll apply that. This is that comparative tool that you're talking about. All right, so most of my traffic, it's a similar pattern, but I have low intake of news content, except for days. And I know that we sent out an email this day, which is yesterday. We see a spike in traffic when we put an email out that contains news content, so people come back to the website for news. That's an expected pattern. That's what we wanted them to do. So we could say, okay, that email worked, I guess. We could look at tracking specific pages or specific links in that email. But that could apply for any type of promotion that you might do, social, what have you. A cohort analysis, this is just getting deeper into some of their terms. This is where we'd look at demographics. A cohort analysis essentially is like people who came in week 1, how many of those people came back the second week, and how many people came back the third week for that? We won't get too deep into that, but there's deeper tools you can go into. I kind of want to just scratch the surface here. Here's where I get the demographics info. It tells me what our key ages are, what the genders are. That's the big chunk of like demographic info. You know, I can start looking at like preference categories, like are they sci-fi movie fiends? Are they news junkies? You can look at that. I don't know if that's going to tell you a bunch of information to improve your website. Maybe it will, but like that's also in here. This is where that interest is. The affinity categories is what we're just talking about. Geography, where people come from. Sorry, it skipped down here. You can look at languages. This is where we would do that sort for, you know, I would look at Madison would be one of my segments versus Milwaukee. And then I could see, you know, here's where I could dig down into city. And it looks like most of the traffic comes from Madison, 70% of it, and 60% of my traffic from Madison viewed news content. So this is where it gets a little more technical. You need to spend some more time sussing out like what we're talking about here. That is a brief look at the audience report, the acquisition report, where things are coming from, where traffic's coming from. I might look at the channels. This is where I knew, sorry, I'm gonna take this segment off because it's just gonna get messy here. So we're just looking at all traffic here again, as opposed to like one segment of it. This is how I knew that our organic search traffic, our unpaid Google searches was on the incline. When we made improvements, I came back here and said, okay, so in March 20, here, we can actually even look at it. We'll just go back and say 2017 to 2019. I'm gonna expand that window out. And let's do a month view. So this is telling me over time how much of my traffic comes from where. Organic search is important. If your organic search is the top on your site, you should start taking steps to make sure your pages are optimized for SEO, because that's how people are trying to find your content. Direct traffic is like a bookmark or somebody directly typing in the link. A referral comes from another website or another source that might be, you know, maybe it's somebody else's newsletter that referred you. Email is a specific email. Social and a display is a display ad in Google language. The Search Console, let me see if I have this set up here correctly. I think I do. This is where I see those keywords. Don't make a liar out of me, Google here. Yeah. Don't be afraid if things come in other. Things come in other or unknown or something like that, because people are using things like incognito and they're blind browsing. They're telling Google, don't track what I'm looking at. It's okay. That happens. People will do that. They want to protect their searches, their privacy. So this is the trend that we saw. UW-Madison attached to a lot of different keywords. So what do? Let's put UW-Madison on every single page. It pretty much is for most sites. I mean, that's like one of the header pieces you have. But we see that like it's attached to a task or a thing that they want to do. That's what people are typing into Google. It tells me how many clicks came through in the time frame that we have set. An impression is like how many times that's seen in Google, like how many times that has been viewed there. The click-through rate, so this is a high one. You know, Qualtrics is kind of specific to UW-Madison. I don't know how many folks use that, but like an 84% click-through rate is pretty astronomical. That's pretty good. That means that a lot of people who type in UW-Madison and Qualtrics end up landing on a page on this site. That's what you want. That's what we wanted. Maybe that's not what you want. I won't get into campaigns right now. There is going to be like a secondary level of this type of class to get deeper into some of these things, but feel free to hop into your own account. Site content. This is like, what are the things that are happening on my site? You can look at an overview. Here's where I know what are my top pages. So into behavior, site content, all pages. it.wis.edu, that's the home page. That makes sense. Most people are coming to the site by landing on the home page. Some sites will see like a deeper page that's already like 2 strings deep. What that usually means is people are using search and they're bypassing your home page and going directly to a deeper page because that's what they want. The user wants to do the task that they need to get complete. Do they need your home page? Maybe not. You know, maybe some people use your homepage to navigate through your site to get to the thing, but we found, at least on this site, a lot of people, an increasing number of people, are just typing in the specific thing they want and going directly to that page.
So is that like a collection of all pages that have that start?
This, I've set mine up so it's very specific. This is only the homepage. This is only the software page. Yep. And here's where we can start looking at, you know, some of these deeper metrics. A page view. Did they land on the page and interact? Was it unique? You know, was it one person that came back 100 times, or was it 250,000 different people? In this case, so we had 250K uniques and only 468. That means, you know, 200-ish of these people plus came back a second time. So it wasn't all unique behavior. How much time did they spend on the homepage? About a minute. How many of these people use the homepage as their entrance? 235. What was the bounce rate on that? How many people came, didn't interact, and headed out? 25%. I usually say the bounce rate, anytime if you're between 20 and 80% of a bounce rate, it's pretty good. You know, you're accounting for people who accidentally came to your page and exited. If your bounce rate dips below 20%, might be something wrong with the setup of your Google Analytics. Make sure, go back and double check that everything's working. If it's 80% or higher, that's like a content problem. That means like more than 80% of people are landing on the page that you have and they're out. So what's going wrong? You know, it's probably that like whatever keywords or whatever title of that page is not matching what the user thinks the intention is that that page should be. So that's a place where you need to like reconfigure what that content is, or start matching up like some of the keywords that they're using to get to that page so it does provide the information that they want. Yeah.
Would that count if the person comes to it.wis.edu and then in the bar at the top where the address is, actually they wanted to go to the software one and they remember, oh, it's services software, and they write it. Would that count as a bounce?
Nope. So if and I think this is what you're describing, if I go to my browser and I say it.wis.edu/services/software, enter.
But I first go to it.wis.edu,
Mm-hmm.
the homepage,
Mm-hmm.
and then in the homepage, then I write the stuff.
I gotcha. Yeah, that's going to count as a bounce because I didn't interact with that page at all. I just landed on the home page. It might, like, if you can set thresholds of time too as to like when that bounce happens. So is it 10 seconds? Is it 30 seconds without an interaction? Is it 10 days where they just landed on your page and stayed there forever? You can tell Google like when does that thing happen? If you don't engage with any content on the page and just retype, that's going to go to that second page That means this is going to show up as a direct referral. So you directly typed the thing in that you wanted, and it.wisc.edu would probably get a bounce checked off on that. Is there another question? Okay. Events I don't have actually set up here. Site search is another thing that you might want to look at too. This is something we talked about, Google's search tool. Yeah, sorry.
Curious, so I know that there's divisions with links that are in the chat.
Mhm.
And then so does Google.
I believe it does not.
It does not.
Yeah, so the chatbot, and Carla from Financial Aid can actually, if you want to, I haven't dug too deep into the usage of the chatbot.
So we're using iDo's chatbot for the financial aid website, and it provides all of its own data for the usage of it. So it doesn't connect to Google, but iDo provides me an entire dashboard that shows me very similar to the kind of same metrics that Google provides for the site itself.
Search terms from site search. Site search is different from a Google search. Site search means if you have search on your website and you're using that tool that is Google connected, what are the things that are people coming to the site and then using search to look up? It's a little different from the Google. It's not too far different. They want VPN. They want Box. They want VoIP. So they're already at a UW-Madison site, so like it probably doesn't make sense to type in UW-Madison again, but they're looking for that specific thing that they might want to track. Conversions. Yes, so the question was, how can I get that search information? You need to install a Google custom search on your website. If you use WordPress, WordPress has its own search, but you would want to install a Google custom search. Gets a little more technical. WisWeb can help you figure that out, how to do those things. But once you install the Google custom search, tell Google Analytics I want you to use the custom search. It'll start feeding this information in a very brief way. So a goal. Let's look quickly at like a goal. So this is all goals that we have on the site. I say I want to look at, I want to look at views to my help page. And this is a quick little dash, like I've set up these different goals. And these might be things that I want people to do on my site. Do they view a help page? How often does that happen? So I can say between March 1st, 2017 to March 7, 2019, I had a 2.36% conversion rate on my help goal. If I decide my target should be 5%, I need to do something to get that number up. That's basically it. I mean, it's not too complicated. You just decide what your goal is and then measure it. And then if it's not happening, try to make a change. And if your change didn't improve anything, try something else. I'm going to quick look at events. Sorry, I have a lot in mine here. You probably don't have this many in yours if you have this set up. This, if it is configured correctly, and it looks like it is, this is what Google Tag Manager does for you. I told Google Tag Manager to track links on my page, to track buttons on my page, to track, I'd said scroll tracking too. I want to know like depth of people and how deep they're tracking onto the page. Scroll tracking has a whole lot more because that happens on every single page. So that number is elevated. But this tells me essentially I have a lot of people clicking an outbound link, so going away from my website. I can go deeper into this and see where those clicks are happening. And then, like, say they're all happening on this one page, but that's what I want it to do. Great. If it's not what I want it to do, then I need to change something. Log into Qualtrics. This is a button that people click on the site to log into, well, Qualtrics. I can track how often that's happening and whether or not that's working the way I want it to. And you can do something similar with yours. You can look at different ways to look at this event tracking. Sorry, that's where it's happening. And I think this tells me, sorry, that's not what I wanted to look at. So anyway, I mean, that's just like, that's what Tag Manager will do for you. It lets you go a little deeper into like specifics of your page that you might want to look at. That's a ton of stuff, I know, to start with. So is there any questions? I can look at something more specific on the dashboard. Otherwise, we're pretty close to wrapping it up, and we'll just like take individual questions if you want. It's a ton to suss through. I know that. It's taken me years to kind of figure out even the level where I'm at with Google Analytics, and still, you know, you got to sometimes think like a data scientist to cut through like what does it mean? You know, I have these numbers, but what do I do with this? And that's the more difficult task. Yeah.
Would you be able to show us, or just how do you even get to the point of creating these things? Like, what, you know, are there videos you watch or what?
Yes. So great.
While you're here, why is there suddenly like a huge jump?
Yep. So this was in fall of 2017 when we optimized our site for search. We started seeing this boost in traffic. We're a Monday through Friday site, so you see these like peaks and drop-offs on the weekend and peaks and drop-offs. That's what we were talking about. We made these optimizations and it started getting more people to the content. And that's what we want to do, is we want to make it easier for you to do the thing that you came to this site to do. This thing right here it's not necessarily another report. If I zoom kind of out, it's sitting down here at the bottom, Discover. This is where you can do more learning. This is where I took the Analytics Academy to become Google certified. You can go through that. There is a help center with Google that can answer a lot of questions for you. I mean, quite often, if there's something I don't know what to do, this is where I'm going and just Googling it myself to figure it out. There is a demo account you can play with. You probably have your own. There's lots of different tools. Data Studio is another way to like visualize your data. The Google Tag Assistant, Tag Manager. This information is all kind of in this like Discover area over here, where you can start like figuring these things out. Like, you know, these are developer tools, so they're like beyond the grasp of even me sometimes. So, but there's like a lot of information to learn, and that's just right here. And admin is where you would control your site. This is where we talked about a filter. If I create like a high-level filter on my site, I told Google, I want you to show me the full domain. So that's why it says it.wis.edu/. That's what I want it to do. It makes it easier for me to cut through the information. If I were to do a segment, well, we kind of showed a segment. It's like how I would break down. The filter would filter everything, and then the segment would just look at a specific piece of info that I would want. Yeah, so with that, there's other classes like these that are happening. There's one, Developing and Measuring Website Goals, that goes deeper into that hard framework. And we're probably gonna offer that hopefully in the near future again as well. There's gonna be a deeper dive into these Google Analytics to really cut down to some of these things. There's also an accessibility class. We focus a lot on web accessibility with the center. And we'll have some like basic initial learning about that as well. In addition to more classes coming soon. There's a survey link. I would really appreciate any feedback you have with that survey, with this paper form that's there. And with that, I would just say thank you. So Maria and Laura and I will be here to answer individual questions. Just bring us up and we'll try to do our best with what we can. I mean, it's hard to cut through everything, considering the universe of analytics, but we'll do our best for the next hour. Yeah.
How do we get the slides?
Yeah, sorry. Back up one time.
I tried putting them in and it.
That's not happening. It
worked.
should take you to a box folder.
Yeah,
It worked.
Try, I don't know if you need VPN to.
Back up again.
Yeah, I'm trying to get back
You
to
don't
it.
need to type the HTTPS. There's that
You can just go to wiz.edu. Yeah. Okay, so you're welcome if you got all you want and more for analytics. This is a place where you can break and head out. Otherwise, stick around and we'll answer your questions.
This is where we'll end the stream as well.
Yeah.
So thank you, folks.